Hello everyone, my name is Arnav, and a few days ago, someone asked me where I was from, and I gave them 3 different answers. My birthplace said one country, my parents came from another, and the place I called home was completely different. Growing up like this means your identity becomes something more complex than a single nationality. Many immigrants or children of immigrants learn to live between cultures. At home, one language, tradition or way of thinking might dominate, but outside another one might rule their life. Over time, these influences begin to mix together. Instead of belonging to just one place, you begin to carry parts of several places with you at once. I realized then that for people who grow up moving across borders, identity is not always simple. It becomes layered, it becomes complex, and it becomes global. Today, we use labels like non-resident citizen, expatriate, immigrant, and many others to describe people who live beyond the country of origin. These abbreviations attempt to categorize millions of individuals who have crossed borders in search of education, opportunity, safety, or simply a different way of life. But behind every label is a story of movement, adaptation, and learning how to belong in more than one place. Today, I want to explore the when, the why, and perhaps even the future of human movement across borders. But more importantly, I want to explore what it means to live beyond boundaries. Human beings have always moved. Migration is not a modern phenomenon. Around 70,000 years ago, early humans began leaving Africa and Asia to then move into Europe, Australia, and even the Americas. Every person alive today descends from those early travelers. In other words, movement is not an exception to human history. It is the foundation of it. And today, that movement continues on a massive scale. Around 281 million people live outside the country where they were born. That is nearly 1 in every 30 people on Earth. If international migrants formed a country, it would be the 4th largest population-wise in the world. But behind all those numbers are individual lives. I am one of those lives. I was born to Indian parents in the UAE, and then got put into international schools where I interacted with people from all across the world, taking each of their perspectives and shaping my global views and opinions. Sort of like taking a Lego set and making something unique from all of it. Growing up across cultures means that learning early that the world is a much bigger place than the borders that are drawn on the map. It means celebrating different holidays, hearing different languages at school, and sometimes answering the question, where are you from? More times than you can count. And often, the answer depends on who's asking. But between cultures and living in between them isn't always easy. Sometimes you feel slightly out of place everywhere. Too foreign for one country, too local for another. And yet, you still persevere. Your accent shifts depending on who you speak to. Your sense of humor adapts. Even the way you think begins to blend influences from different cultures. You start to realize something important. Belonging isn't always tied to a single location. Sometimes belonging is something you can build across many places. And this experience is becoming increasingly common. Each year, millions of students study outside their home countries, forming friendships and collaborations that stretch across continents. Universities have become global meeting points where ideas travel as freely as possible. The modern workplace is changing too. A team working on a single project might include someone in Bangalore, someone in London, and someone in Toronto. Technology has quietly transformed the way we work, learn, and connect. The world, in many ways, is shrinking. But as people move and cultures mix, an important question arises. Are we diluting cultures, or are we creating something new? Some people worry that globalization erodes cultural identity. They fear that when traditions mix, unique customs may slowly disappear. But history? History tells a slightly different story. Cultures rarely vanish completely. Instead, they evolve. They borrow from one another. They adapt. They transform. Cities themselves have become cultural mosaics. In places like New York, in places like Adelaide, in places like Muscat, dozens of languages can be heard in everyday life. People from different backgrounds live side by side, sharing ideas, traditions, and perspectives. What emerges from this is not a loss or dilution of culture. It is the creation of new culture. Anthropologists sometimes call this cultural hybridization. When different cultures and traditions meet, they do not simply replace one another. Instead, they blend and create something unique. An individual to grow between cultures often develop a simple and special ability. The ability to see the world from multiple perspectives. When you have experienced many different ways of living, it becomes harder to believe that your way is the only way. You begin to understand that the world is full of possibilities. This leads to a bigger question. What does the future of human movement look like? Which borders will become more flexible? And will they become stricter or more lax? Will mobility increase or will they become more restricted? Could there be something as a universal passport one day? Or could there be a place where people can move around freely despite where they're from? It may sound unrealistic, but history shows that systems evolve. For example, does anyone know what the Schengen zone is? Just raise your hands. Yes? Okay, a few of you. In the Schengen zone, for example, hundreds of millions of people in Europe can already travel between countries without routine border checks. Regional agreements in other parts of the world are also slowly increasing freedom of movement. However, the future of mobility is not only a technological question or a bureaucratic question. It is also a philosophical one. For centuries, identity has been closely tied to geography, whether it be the Romans, the Greeks, the Mayans. We define ourselves by where we're from, our nationality, our passport, our hometown. But what happens when you grow up influenced by many places? What happens then? Well, perhaps the idea I want to share today is this. Belonging does not have to come from one place, but it can come from many. People who live beyond boundaries often carry a piece of every single place that they've lived at or experienced. A language learned at childhood, a tradition picked up from friends, a perspective shaped by living in different cultures. When people move, they carry more than language. They carry stories, ideas, and curiosity. In a world facing global challenges, from climate change to technological transformation, collaboration across cultures is no longer optional. It is essential. No single country can solve any of these challenges alone. Well, perhaps movement beyond boundaries is not simply a personal journey as well. Perhaps it is part of humanity's collective future. Because when people move, they bring the world closer together. Our languages may differ, our traditions may vary, our celebrations may look different from one another, but the fundamental human desires for belonging, opportunity, and connection remain the same everywhere. The question today is not whether humans will continue to move across borders, or if it's even possible anymore. We will, that's a fact. The real question is how we choose to respond to that movement. Will we build higher walls or broader bridges? Will we protect cultures by isolating them, or will we allow them to flourish through exchange? And perhaps most importantly, can we imagine a future where being a global citizen is not unusual, but entirely normal? Thank you.